Hi everyone, my name is David Ogilvy, and this is the podcast where I explore what it means to live, feel, and work better. Have you ever experienced a relationship problem and wondered what to do next? This week, I talked to relationship expert and coach Phil Airson about his work helping people supercharge their connections and his advice on getting more from your relationships. Here goes. So, hi Phil, welcome to the Resilience Development Podcast. I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad I can be part of it. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, because I'm looking forward to chatting to you because you're all about relationships, aren't you? Because you're a relationship coach.
Indeed, yes, I'm a relationship coach.
Yeah, and when I think about resilience, right, I always think people tend to think resilience is a personal attribute.
Mm-hmm.
We forget that it's also about the people around us and our environments. So, for example, think about Cinderella. Cinderella, she's the epitome of resilience, isn't she? She's got a positive mindset. She's going through lots of adversity, but she keeps cracking on in exactly the kind of way. But then you forget and you go, well, where would she have been without a fairy godmother?
Yeah.
Or if you're watching the Disney version, where would she be without the animals that help her hide and things like that? In other words, relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the good relationships in there. It's the ones that she had with with her family, the ones who weren't so nice. And it's about what we can get from not what we can get, but what each relationship can teach us. That's what's really important.
Yeah, what each relationship can teach us. That's interesting because I find there's a saying, or I think there's a saying, I might have just made it up. You can judge the quality of your life by the quality of your relationships.
Yeah, that sounds like a saying that I've heard before, right? But it's true. It's true, and that's not just the romantic relationships, but it's the ones with the family, it's the ones with friends, it's the ones with everyone, and maybe most importantly, the one with yourself, because in every relationship, you're going to be there, right?
Yeah, yeah, you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is about building that kind of awareness, isn't it? Awareness of self, awareness of others, which I think, because often always makes me, it's obvious now doing what I do, right? It
Mhm.
is really obvious, but our thinking impacts so much around us on a daily basis. It impacts how we think, how we feel, and those kind of relationships. So it's why I wanted to chat with you. I want to get all the insight, right?
Sure.
I want to get some kind of possibly maybe a chat about things that people would probably want to ask you if they were me, and get the if you're
Yeah.
coaching lots of people, getting the insight, because I'm kind of going, we're all coming through the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
And that most people I talk to, that's impacted their relationship with self and
Yes.
also with others.
Yeah.
And maybe we could start. If I ask you, are you seeing that? Are you seeing more people now than you were pre-COVID? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yes, twofold for that. One, kind of Zoom and everything made me take my business international. So I work with people all over the world now, which is wonderful. So obviously there's more people from that, but yeah, just to kind of take it back, and what I always like to do is like just slow it down a little bit. When we are in a relationship, what I believe is the real the benefit, the real gold, the real nuggets to take away from the relationship. I talked earlier about what we learn is that nothing is better in our world than a relationship for reflecting where it is we need to grow as people, and where we are not free. And what I mean by that is our partners will show us areas of life that we are holding on to some belief, or holding on to some value, or holding on to some opinion that is causing us a little bit of anguish, right? And I'm going to get back to the pandemic point of this, but it's all important. So, what I would always kind of start off when I work with people is getting them to look at their relationship and look at, right, what's the lesson I'm trying to, what's the lesson that life is trying to teach me here? Because I think subconsciously we always are trying to learn that lesson and be a little bit more free, a bit more peaceful. And I think that's why people end up in the same kind of bad relationships over and over again, right? Because their mind wants them to learn this lesson, but okay, we haven't learned it, so we'll get that same kind of person again, that same kind of person again, until eventually it feels like a lesson's learned and you can move on. And you feel a little bit freer. Maybe it's a lesson of, right, I need to respect myself more. I need to love myself more. I need to stand up for myself more, or make my voice heard a little bit more. But whatever it is, each relationship can teach us a little lesson. So going back to what you were asking, the pandemic has intensified that, and intensified because people are spending so much time together in their relationships. They're almost forced to be self-reflective and see the things that these relationships are trying to teach them. And if they're not, don't have that awareness, and they're not trying to learn, that can ramp up and ramp up and ramp up. And man, yeah, that's caused a lot of issues, as I'm sure you can imagine. If the lesson is about they need to learn to respect themselves, or that's their kind of next level, is to learn self-respect, and they're not getting it, and they're not getting it, they're not getting it, and they've got nowhere else to go, that can be super, super intense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking COVID amplified everything.
Sure.
We're suddenly forced to be with people, people that we love dearly and have good relationships,
Yeah.
but we need to be with them all the time,
Yes.
right? And probably you would have been forgiven for some of the things that you were perhaps not learning. But
Yeah.
if you're with somebody all day, every day, it can be a downward spiral if you're not careful. There's a kind of
Absolutely.
limit, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's part of our subconscious that wants to learn this lesson, and it's why when we do get into those relationships over and over again, when I mentioned the same type of one, we don't necessarily know why it's happening, but it's because our subconscious wants us to learn this lesson, wants us to grow in this area, because it'll bring us some freedom, some lightness, a little bit of peace. And yeah, in day-to-day life, when there was no COVID, you could maybe not learn the lesson, go to work, you're not really being involved in it, but it's like, it's persistent. It's seeing that again and again, seeing where you're not reflected back to you over and over again. And if you're not, like I say, if you're not aware, then yeah, it's going to be frustrating. It's going to build up. It's going to create this feeling of wrongness, I suppose.
Because as I'm listening to you, I think it sounds philosophy. I can't even say the word.
Philosophical.
Thank you, Phil. A bit philosophical, but it's got a real practicality to it, isn't it?
No, for sure it does. Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of think I think, I don't know, but I'm sure I've read somewhere divorce rates have gone up, for example, after the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would expect that. And yes, it does sound quite philosophical, but it's also kind of deeply rooted in my background in psychotherapy and in kind of the Freudian way of looking at things and a lot of things like that. So there is neuroscience behind it, but
Yeah.
it's trying to make that a little bit more understandable and accessible to help people move on. And yeah, I would expect divorce rates to go up, but not just because people aren't learning a lesson or what have you, but sometimes because people are, and and really not being hammered, because that sounds brutal, but seeing that lesson come up over and over and over again, and learning it and seeing it and not having any space to breathe from it, can really kind of, if someone suddenly learns a massive way to respect themselves and sees how often they're being disrespected, then yeah, they can recognize that relationship doesn't work for them. So sometimes, especially during COVID, it's not just not learning the lesson, but actually really learning the lesson can also cause that a little bit, because people are looking at, it's the same reason a lot of people have changed jobs, because they've looked at it and seen, okay, does this actually make me happy? Does this suit what I want to be and who I want to be? And yeah, a lot of times people have moved jobs, but it's the same with relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody earlier about my sense of the world at the moment, and the sense of what I'm seeing in the world is many people are questioning, do I belong? Yeah, do I belong in this job? Do I belong in this relationship? Belonging is in itself based in relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And it's something I know a lot of clients, and I know a lot that I myself, when I was younger, certainly really struggled to kind of come to terms with about where do I belong. And I often find when I work with people, there's this unspoken sense of wrongness, and I don't know how else to describe it really, but that they are out of place, that they are wrong, and not for any particular reason, but it's more just a feeling. And they can be part of a group and on paper fitting well, but it still feels wrong, or in a relationship and it's going well, but it still feels wrong. And what that would normally indicate to me is a bit of introspective work, a bit of looking at, okay, why does you feel
Mm.
wrong? Is there something you're not accepting fully about yourself? Normally, yes, because everyone's got a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, 10 years ago, I left banking.
Mhm.
Right, top talent, director in banking, and I handed in my notice, and everybody was surprised, including me. Right, including me. And what was really interesting was I went through quite a lot of emotional turmoil. I've got a team here that we've
Mhm.
gone through a lot. I really like the job. Everything, to your point, my point is everything looked good on paper,
Yeah.
including me, but something didn't quite fit,
Mm.
right? And I knew what it was. There were two things. One is we had a chief exec that said, "Let's build a bank that we can be proud of." Yet we were laying people off, and I was involved in that, and it didn't quite fit with me.
Mhm.
But what was interesting was, as I was thinking of leaving, I obviously had to have a conversation with my wife.
Sure.
And to this day, I remember she just said to me, "What are you afraid of, David?" And suddenly it came out of my mouth. I'd not thought about it. It was like, "I'm really scared that I'm going to mess up and we're going to have to go back and live in my parents' bedroom."
Mm.
And I looked at myself and raised my brows and heard what I'd said.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, now that I've verbalized it, that's exactly what I think." And
Mhm.
she said, "But you are so much more than that now. You're not that little kid."
Yeah.
I had a difficult childhood. I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a difficult childhood.
Sure.
You're not
Sure.
that little kid. You've built so much in your life, and you've got
Mhm.
so many resources. There's absolutely no way we would ever be going back to your parents and living in the bedroom with two kids.
Yeah.
Right, but as you said it, and I think that's probably a good example, right? Of I had a relationship on paper outwardly at
Mhm.
work that looked. A lot of people would have wanted my job, and it would. And I wanted
Yes.
my job. I liked it, but then I wanted to do something different. There's a tension in me that I didn't quite understand. And then
Yes.
when I verbalized it, I was like, "Oh, it's like a big weight had lifted off my shoulder." And the ending to that story is that I handed in my notice.
Mm.
The amount of people, when they discovered what I was going to do, which is what I
Mm.
do now, were
Yeah.
saying, "You'd be really good at it. We thought you'd have done it ages ago."
Yeah.
And the only person standing in the way of me was me with my unquestioned thoughts and
For sure.
beliefs, and I didn't have anybody to run it past.
Yeah.
It's like an echo chamber.
Yeah. And that's it, right? That's almost a great example of two relationships there. The one you had with work that didn't quite fit. Well, three really. So the one you had with work didn't quite fit. Weren't sure why. The one you have with your wife, and how she can reflect, or certainly give you feedback on where you're at, and see. It's so easy for us to see that in others, and so difficult for us to see on ourselves, right? But once you said it and she said that, oh yeah, of course, that's obviously the answer, because she can see it where we can't, and that's a beautiful thing there.
Yeah.
And then the third one in play, there's the relationship you have with yourself, and obviously there was a little bit of the inner child there that needed to be heard and comforted in that way. Even if it's just verbally, it's yeah, it's a fascinating little story there with the three types of relationships
Well,
that you can look at.
I think the reason it's interesting is, as well as at the time I did it, my kids were. I'm just thinking back now. Like they'd have been 7 and 13,
Yeah.
right? There isn't a day now that doesn't go by when I'm so glad that I was around for them.
Mm, mm,
So there's an extra relationship because I was commuting 2 days a week. I wasn't around, um, and just getting up, being there for breakfast, being there, those kind of things. And even my
yeah.
kids say it. They kind of say, Dad, you're different." And I was
Yeah.
thinking, I don't think I am. I think I've kind of returned to my true self.
Yeah,
But of course,
absolutely.
they'd not seen that. So I think it's that kind of. I think my point is, as I'm thinking about it, is this real benefit
Mhm.
because we're so connected with people around us that
Yeah.
it's not one dimensional, isn't it? I suppose
Mhm.
if you develop one relationship, it it has an impact elsewhere. You
Yeah,
must see that.
yeah, absolutely. I didn't start off as a relationship coach. I just started off as a general life coach. But whatever people came to me for, it always came back to relationships. So
Mm,
that's a big reason I kind of moved into it. But you're absolutely right. If you can focus on this area, it has such a huge impact on work, on your life outside of work, on walking down the street, on the family, on your partner, and on how you relate to yourself. Looking every day in the mirror. It really is that kind of, it's dropping a stone in the river and watching the ripples go out. It affects everything. And yeah, that's beautiful. That's something I can relate to. I have not baby twins now, 2-year old, but toddler twins, and I get to
mm,
spend a lot of time with them and my 4-year-old son as well. And it's a beautiful thing, and you can feel that unspoken importance of that connection, of that bond, of that love when you can really focus on it and know how to be there. And it sounds like that's exactly
mm.
what happened for you.
And you mentioned earlier on that you're international, right? You can
Yes.
work with anybody. Do you? I don't know, Lord, the question, but do you think, given that you've got that international experience, that we're all the same underneath when it
Yeah.
comes to relationships?
So I believe that at all of our core, everyone wants to be loved and feel free. And that might sound a little bit hippie-ish, a little bit like something the Beatles would write, but essentially it is. Even if people want money and cars and all of that kind of thing, really they don't want that. They want the feeling that they think it will give them, which is usually freedom and being
Yeah.
loved. So yeah, there are different setups and structures to these relationships and to the people, but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. People want to feel love, accepted, and peace, and that's really what
Yeah.
I work with people to get.
Yeah, and I don't think that is hippie. I look at psychology and
Mm.
belonging,
Yeah.
right? Belonging is key to our well-being. And I also look at look at some of the marketing that's out there, financial freedom.
Hmm.
It all of it's based on that basic need to feel free. So it might sound hippie to some, but
Yeah.
actually, if you look at it practically in real life and you look at it from a basis of psychology, is we're marketed every day based on freedom and that
Yeah,
desire for freedom.
absolutely. And people can often get a little bit muddied when I talk about freedom, but it's because a lot of people can say, well, Phil, I am free. I can walk out the door. I can do whatever. But it's more an internal freedom, a freedom from the feeling of not good enough or not enough in some area, or the feeling of pressure of to be someone else, or the pressure to succeed at work, whatever it is, those internal things that we're not free in. And when I say relationships are there to kind of to teach us and to show us where we're not free, that's what I mean. Because if you can really tap into that, I do believe that's what everyone's looking for. So I think financial, that just on that one sales bit you mentioned, I do understand what they mean by financial freedom. It's essentially not having to attach yourself to the idea of money worries, basically, isn't it? It's
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you can go on YouTube, and this will be on YouTube in a bit.
Mm,
But you go on YouTube, you've got the FIRE movement. The financial independent. It
mhm.
is all about freedom. And I'm kind of, as you were talking there, I was thinking to help understand, and it is a question. Perhaps it's more about freedom to choose
Yeah,
rather than freedom to do anything. So, for example, you might go, I might not like it, but I understand where I'm coming from. It fits in with my values,
sure.
and I've made a choice, and that in itself is empowering and liberating. It might not be wonderful. It might be
Mm.
divorce, for
Yeah,
example,
absolutely.
but you've felt you've had the freedom, if that's the right word, to make that choice.
Yeah. And what's beautiful in that is just to kind of go a little bit of a layer deeper than that. it's the and this can very nicely goes into what we've talked about resilience is the confidence and self-acceptance to know that whatever you choose, that you are enough, that you are okay, you can survive it, and still make that choice. And that's real freedom, because if you're making the choice, if you can look in any scenario, you can make a choice, for the most part. But if you were saying going for a divorce because you believed you were this horrible person, you need to get away from it, that the other person's better off without you, that's a different energy to carry, and you'll make different decisions and different thoughts and say different things from that place, as opposed to, like, I'm good enough and I understand that this person is just not right for me, and therefore I think a divorce is the best option. And there is a freedom in that, and what you can say and think and create from there, as opposed to the much more negative side of
Yeah.
things in that.
So can I ask you then, because
Yeah,
we're hooking on divorce, right? I feel
yeah,
like I am.
sure.
It's kind of what would you say the top three things that people come to you
Yeah,
for help? What are the kind of top
yeah,
three issues, if you like, or sources that they're wanting to look at and work on?
yeah, absolutely. So number one with a bullet is they believe that the other person needs to change in some way. So whether that's listening more, being more present, earning more money, having more romance, all of that kind of stuff. That their belief is the other person should change more. The second one would be they feel that their voice is not being heard in relationships, romantic or otherwise. Third one, I would say that they are aware that their relationship with themselves isn't great. So confidence, or whether that's to speak up or make decisions, or how they look or how they feel. That they would be the big three for me.
Do you notice any difference between men and women?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Of course. I mean, at the core, no, but on the surface, yeah. It's a lot more. It's often a lot more work to get a guy to realize the value of going that deep and that introspective, because I know, especially up north, it's drilled into you that that's not really the way to be. You don't go down a mine or to a shipyard and start spilling your heart. But when you can get that person there, it's huge, right? But yeah, that would be the main difference, I would say. Um, what I would say as well is that women with confidence issues, that can take a little bit more work. Guys just probably kind of need a bit of a nudge. But yeah, they're the main differences, I would say.
Yeah, because I find in our resilience programs,
Mm,
we find imposter syndrome,
mm,
and we find it generally more prevalent in women.
yes,
And what always surprises it doesn't surprise me, because I know what I'm looking for. But what surprises me is, on the outside, these are very confident, very successful, very professional women,
sure,
and you just never guess.
yeah,
You would never guess, and it tends to be what Louise has noticed in our team is
mm.
coming more towards menopause.
Right, okay,
Is there a particular kind of life stage that you find relationships are really tested? We've talked about big events like the pandemic. Are there any particular life stages that really kind of test relationships, or points that people might be, if there's somebody out there going, I'm of a certain age, or I'm doing this, and feeling alone, and a bit of a, like, they are, is it just them? Are there any points in life, or any things where you would go, no, actually, I see a lot of people around this?
yeah. So new parents often hit a roadblock because, as you're aware, it's life changing in a way that you can't
Mm.
really tell anyone. So that can be a real kind of trigger point for people. Um, it's often to do with work related things. To be honest, there's often some connection to work, but really it is just to kind of go back to the imposter syndrome thing that you were mentioning. When when we're younger and when we're growing up, you kind of create this idea of yourself and who you're meant to be. So, I am shy, I am outgoing, I am, easily lovable, not lovable, whatever it is. And we pick up
Mm.
all these messages and reinforce them over the years. I'm sure you know all about that with your coaching work. But when we can hold on to that idea, and no matter how much we progress up the ladder, we've still got that idea of ourselves that's never been addressed or challenged. And so if you're really successful, but you've got I know that one thing that my parents always used to say to me was, if you don't work hard, you'll end up working at Burger King. And it was always Burger King for some reason. I don't know why. We don't have a Burger King around here, but anyway. And I had to really notice that keep coming up. As well as like yourself, I worked in the bank, and as well as I did there, that would always kind of play my mind anytime. Like, oh man, I should really be working in Burger King. Oh, I know that's a bit of a silly example, but if you've got those thoughts that are untested and unchallenged, and you're moving up, your mind is always thinking, "Well, this is us out of our comfort zone. We're not where we should be," and that can really ruin careers and damage careers and people as well if it's not properly looked at. So, when I work with people, I always try and get to the root of it, because it's quite often just a bit of a sticky plaster going on it, isn't it? It's like, oh, the promotion makes us feel good for now. That must be over that. Instead of looking at that and finding out why you can't fully accept and enjoy and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I get it. It reminds me of, again, I used to work in London City, senior level, and I'm working with consultants from all around the world, all the big names, right? And I constantly had in the back of my head, and I never really realized it, right? I'm just a kid from a council estate. What do I know? Versus
Yeah,
that person who's gone to a big, prestigious American university. And it didn't matter how many times people told me how good I was, or how good the slide decks were and the presentations and things like that. I had that little nagging bit in my head, and
absolutely.
and and yeah, I'd say I've outgrown it now. I've
Yes.
had to become self-aware, but I'd probably say more so. I didn't do it deliberately,
Mhm.
but I kind of go, I wish I'd have been able to talk to somebody about that much sooner and had it played back to me
Yeah.
or played to me, because you have that echo chamber in your head and nobody's questioning it. A- And if people hear it, if people could hear it, if we had a little volume button that people could turn up, I suspect from the work I do as well, most people would go, "What? You're
Yeah.
saying what? What to yourself in your head?"
Yeah, absolutely. I did this course once on it was relationship with the self. Actually, it was a couple of years ago. One of the exercises was to, at the end of the day, write down all of your inner dialogue you have with yourself and how you talk to yourself, but write it in the way that you think it. And it was horrific. It was
Yeah.
brutal. And if people can do that and see how they actually relate to themselves, it can be quite shocking. And
Mm.
one of the analogies I say I like to use. I made up this analogy to get a point across a while ago with a client, and I hate it, and I don't think it works, but everyone seems to connect to it, so I'll just keep using it. But it's like, if you took this old, beaten, and broken chair, and you put it in my house, or you put it in a mansion, or you put it on the streets, or in a school hall, wherever you put it, it doesn't matter where you put that chair, it is still a chair that needs some attention and some repair. And it's the same with a person. If you don't really look at the person and do the work on the person, no matter where you stick it, whether they become a millionaire, whether they live on the streets, they're still going to have the same issues. And yeah, it's a
No,
little
I,
bit of
I
that
like
too.
that. No, I get it. I get it. I like it, because I was also thinking as well, some of it is environmental, because you could put that chair in some environments and
Yeah,
some environments would appreciate it for what it is.
yeah, yeah,
Others would go, look at that tatty old chair. Some
exactly.
people would go, look at that beautiful piece of furniture that just needs a bit more attention. So, and again,
Yes, and
it's that person and environmental fit as well. It makes it really
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's a great phrase I heard, and it's we can't change the content, so we have to change the context.
Yeah.
and it's not changing the relationship always, but sometimes how we're perceiving things and how we're looking at things that can make the biggest difference.
Mm. And that's one of the real benefits of working with a coach, isn't it? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
biased because I'm a coach, but
Yeah, well, coach is the best. Yeah, it's I get it.
and it's challenging that perspective. I've got a question for you though as well, because
Yeah,
I know you have a counselling
I
background as
do.
well, right? Because I kind of think, and I'm not. Some people wouldn't approach a relationship coach because they're thinking, do I really want to admit relationships are not great? And then to go to somebody who's got a therapy background,
Yeah,
they might go, "Oh no." Right? What would you say to somebody like that? What's the difference between a coach and a therapist?
yeah,
And what does a coach with a therapist background
yeah,
offer that other coaches don't? Two
absolutely.
questions there. Yeah.
Right. So I worked as a therapist for a long time, and I always found it was like finding a boat that had sank at the bottom of the sea and pulling it out and finding out what made it sink. Okay, and it's very useful to know. It's very helpful. But what coaching adds to that is it repairs the boat and it plots somewhere for it to go, and it goes on the journey, and it might change the destination, and it might have, as corny as it sounds, adventures on the way. But there is that side of things that's not just so remedial as therapy was. It's not all just about, okay, well, why did this happen, and what? Because I always found therapy said, all right, this is why you are the way you are. See you later, and you're just
Yeah.
kind of left there, just like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, where do I go? The coach's job is to look, right. Where do you want to be? Yeah, so I do that side of things. We'll look at why you are the way you are, and what's causing you these issues. But it's also about, right, where do you want to be, and going on that journey. And it's being a lot more aspirational and a lot more, okay, let's move forward. And it's not just about looking in the rearview mirror all the time.
Yeah, that's how I think about the two. Therapy is about the rear view mirror,
Yeah,
whereas coaching is about the kind of looking through the window and going
absolutely,
forward.
absolutely.
And both have a place, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Both
and
depending
that's it.
on what you
That's it.
need. And I guess you bring, because I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, and I know
Yes,
where the line is, and
yes.
ethically I have to draw that line. I'm guessing actually you can flex.
And that's it. It's the my therapy background is there as a tool.
Yeah.
It's there when we need to go there. But it's only if it's going to be in aid of the person getting to where they want to get to.
Yeah, so I suppose I'm going to go back because
Mhm.
I don't think we explored that. That the other events and life stages that
Yes.
people would come to you, are they? I'm kind of, I want anybody listening to it to go, oh yeah, that's me, and go, and then equate the context and go, yeah, oh yeah, that's me. I could do with talking to Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the context that you put it, I would say, yeah, new parents was as often a trigger for me to come to me.
Yeah.
But I've worked with people who are students, and I've worked with people who served in the Vietnam War, and everyone
Right.
in between. And there isn't, it's when there seems to be this persistent problem with a relationship where there's a repeating pattern, or a stop that you just can't get past. And there's this feeling that certainly I've felt, and other clients have felt, and people have felt, where you maybe go to work or you go out somewhere and you're just left thinking, I don't know what's happened here. Like, how have we ended up here? How do we get away from it? I don't know what's going on. That's kind of where I would come in.
Mm.
Or the other one would be what we talked about earlier, where if on paper it looks great, but you can't feel it. Yeah, that's where I come in as well.
And what would you say to somebody who kind of would go, look, I could, that resonates with me. So
Yeah,
I'm a new parent. It all looks good on paper, but it
yeah.
doesn't feel great. But I'm a little bit unsure. I'm a bit unsure about talking to a relationship coach because it's a bit, isn't it admitting that I've got it wrong? Or what would you say to
No.
somebody?
So what I would say to somebody in that instances, it's not that you've got it wrong, but it's maybe more that your perception of the situation just needs adjusting slightly. So it's like, when you looked at those pictures and it's like, is it an old lady? Or then it's actually, oh, it's a picture of a young woman, and then you see it and you can't unsee it, kind of thing. It's a bit like that, where you haven't necessarily done anything wrong, because things can only be made wrong by us believing that they're wrong. So therefore, it's all in our head. Anyway, that's not the road to go down today. But it's more about changing how you look at your relationship, look at yourself, and look at how you relate to the world. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I get you, and perhaps wrong was the wrong word, because as you're thinking about those images, I'm thinking about the rabbit and the duck one.
Yeah,
You look
yeah,
and
yeah,
what do you see
exactly.
first? And it's been proven, hasn't it, that around Easter time, more people see the
Yeah,
rabbit.
yeah,
In other words, it's that kind of attentional bias. And
yes,
I suppose if you're in a difficult relationship and you try to work it out, then it will you'll constantly have that kind of attentional bias. And I suppose coming to work
absolutely.
outside of that, working with
Yeah,
somebody, really not just only helps you challenge your own perspective, but do it in an environment where you're not getting that bias,
yeah,
because that's how we work. We're designed to kind of
of course.
see the rabbit rather than the duck at Easter.
Absolutely, and you can feel that come in when you start thinking that the other person's quote unquote wrong all the time. It's always the other person. It's always them doing something. It's always them. It's always the
Yeah.
way they are. And I would put to you that it's not, but it's the way that you're perceiving that thing.
Yeah. So if you're hearing that kind of black and white thinking, it's always them.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Everything they do,
yeah,
it's never me.
yeah,
They're signs, aren't they?
or the exact opposite. It's always me. It's always me. It's always me. Neither
Yeah.
of them are realistic or right. Yeah.
Yeah. I get it, because I often think, well, it's not them or us, them or me, it's us.
Mm,
It's not always or never, it's sometimes, and it's not everything and nothing, it's some things.
yeah.
In other words, we're not in that black and white. So if you've noticed in very black and white thinking, that's
Mhm.
probably a sign, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's 9 times out of 10, it's the way we're looking at something. And again, I didn't mean to come on and throw so many analogies, but I use this one, and again, this sometimes works. But if I was to put a pair of shoes in a big school hall, and 10 people had to walk past it, and 10 people walk past it, don't care. There's just some shoes on the floor, shoes on the floor. But person number 10 comes along, and there's been shoes left out at home. She used to get in trouble for making a mess when she was younger. She nearly tripped over some of her kids' shoes this morning, and it's just it's a trigger for her. And suddenly those shoes represent something that make her
Mm.
fly off in a rage. You can see that those shoes don't actually hold anything, because 9 people have just walked past and haven't even noticed it. But it's the lens through which she's viewing it that's creating the problem. So that's what we need to look at in the relationships.
Totally get that.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, I'm from I'd say, a disadvantaged background.
yeah.
So I like to keep things nice and tidy and clean.
Oh yeah.
I've got to say, the rest of my family,
Mhm.
not as much.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah. I get
sometimes I find myself going, "Urgh,"
that.
kind of thing, and it can impact. And you're back to that self awareness, aren't you?
Exactly.
And understanding yourself, and because I always think, I always I always think our thinking has such a big impact on our
Mm.
lives every single day,
Mm.
on our relationships and everything else. Yet we don't stop and think, because we're not really taught those skills. So I'm going to ask you,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you for some. If could you give me, and anybody listening, 3 tips, if for better relationships, 3
Yes.
tips that we could take away right
Mhm.
from this. What would those tips be? Because me and you chatted before. I've seen you on LinkedIn. You have 9,000 followers, so you
Mhm.
obviously know something about relationships, right? You
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
know
yeah.
something, right? Just can you give us just a few tips based on your work and your insights that people could just take away and try today and go, do you know what? Oh yeah, that's good.
Okay, yes. I tell you what, the first one's not really something you can try, but it's a way to consider life being that will cause an effect. You'll see what I mean. So I want people to consider that No matter what they do in life, you cannot change what anyone else thinks, what anyone else feels, or what anyone else does. And if you do, it's under duress, and it'll create a toxic environment that'll create resentment. So all you can ever actually focus on is you and how you show up. So focusing on you and creating the best version of you to show up to that relationship is the only way to improve it. Never, never the other person, because you can't affect what someone else does. That's number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing that I would say is for people to slow down. And what I mean by that is we are always under the belief that we need to be someone else really, really quickly. So my relationship needs to be this amazing thing, or I need to be this amazing partner, or I need to look super, attractive for the beach, but I need to do it, yesterday. It needs to be done, 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 done. And what I would encourage people to do is just slow down a little bit and look at where they are now, and look at the things that are there and available for them now, instead of getting so far out into the future. Because if you consistently tell your brain that, oh, I'll be happy when the relationship's mended, I'll be happy when they change, I'll be happy when I change, whatever it is, you're telling your brain, okay, happiness is out there in the future. And the problem with that is we can't live in the future. We can only live day to day. We can only ever live in right now. So all your brain's hearing is happiness isn't here right now. Happiness isn't here right now. And we can also only be here right now. So just getting people to slow down and try and show up as best they can in the present moment. I think that would be the other thing. And a big one that I use a lot, and it comes up quite a lot, is have a look where you're living your relationship through expectation. Because living through expectation is guaranteed to cause discomfort and pain. Because what you're saying is, I believe that the universe or that life should go a certain way. And I don't know anyone who has that power, right? You can't make life go a certain way. But if you're living through expectations, you have a belief that something should go, or someone should act a certain way, and life doesn't work like that ever, really. And so you're always going to be disappointed. You're always going to be upset. It's like if you got up and expected the sky to be yellow every day, you're just going to wake up frustrated and angry and annoyed. Even if you expect it, even if you believe it should be that way, it's not. So have a look with where you're living through expectations of the other person, and try to think what life would be like without that expectation. Ask yourself, what would the relationship be like if I didn't have this expectation, or this belief that someone should be different, and start to introduce a little bit more of acceptance. Now, when I say that, I appreciate that some relationships are different. I'm not saying if someone's in an
Yeah.
abusive or a horrible relationship that they should accept that, but it is what it is, and things can't be different because they're not right now. And just kind of living into that acceptance a little bit. That would be my third bit.
Yeah, broad tips for everyday relationships, and I
Yeah.
think the three are, if I remember them correctly, and I'll just summarize them, are don't try control other people. You'll
Yeah.
really be disappointed,
Spot
right?
on.
All you can really do is take ownership for
Focus on yourself.
yourself.
That's right.
Number two is don't live in the future.
Yeah.
Enjoy now and be
Slow
present,
down. Yeah.
and slow down. Thank you. And then, kind of related to that is don't live a life of expectation.
Correct.
Right. So three good tips. So I've got one last question, if I may, Phil.
Yes.
One last question. If you could go back and give one bit of advice to your younger self, now that you know all this stuff about relationships, what would it be?
Do you want the answer in terms of relationships, or do you want the answer in terms of just the knowledge I've picked up as a coach?
However you like, whatever you think.
Sure. So I would go back and I would explain to myself that no one can ever abandon or reject you. You can only ever abandon or reject yourself. And what I mean by that is other people can only be somewhere or be somewhere else. be here or be somewhere else. But it's what I make that mean that caused so much, difficulties as a child and as a teenager and things like that. And I would hope that younger me gets it. Younger me probably would not, or just wouldn't care, or whatever. But yeah, that's the biggest bit of advice. And I do think that does go into relationships as well, because that was a big thing for me growing up. Because I felt rejected as a kid, I wanted to people please all the time, right? And that's how it came up, because I didn't want to be rejected again. So I'd go above and beyond to be nice to the other person, and that wasn't always a healthy thing to do. So yeah, that's another thing I work with people on, but that's what I would need to work on.
Yeah, there's a whole host of. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there's a whole host of things in there. So if people are listening to this and go, do you know what? I think I'd quite like to look up Phil, like to work with him. Where do they find you? How can they find you?
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, just Phil Airson, Airson, or on my website, www.pmalifecoaching.com. That's it.
Right. And we'll put links in all the usual places.
Sure.
This will be on YouTube, and it will direct people to where. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Phil.
Hey, you too, David. I always like to chat about these things, and it's been a very interesting chat.
Yeah, I think people are going to take quite a bit away from this, and I hope it's made people two things, right? I hope it's made people think about their relationships. It's given them some tips to improve the relationships. But the other big thing is, I hope it's encouraged some people to reach out and go, do you know what I could do with working on my relationships, or I could do with some hits and tips, and I hope they get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always willing to jump on a call with anyone. I do hope people, it gives people at least a pause to reflect on where they're at. If that's all it is, then perfect.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Phil.
All right, David.
I'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
So thanks again for joining me on this episode. If you'd like to talk to Phil directly, or you're thinking about a relationship, head over to pmalifecoaching.com, and I'll see you again next time.